Welcome to today's episode of the Next Level Podcast. And today, we're talking about something crazy. We're talking about, we are talking about the flip process. Okay, so let's talk about it.
Friggin' Felix.
So this is what we're going to do, okay? I say it's a balancing act. You tell me what you think. Don't spend all of your money on getting some really, really nice looking floors. And then all of a sudden you're like, oop, we don't have that much money in the budget for everything else we needed. You end up having to buy budget options, budget fans. And then you reach the end of the flip. And before you know it, it's just everything looks out of place.
Yeah, that
So
hurts.
what would we call that? What would, for the title of this podcast episode?
Falling in love with your floors? I call it making wise use of your rehab budget.
Yes, using the budget correctly.
Yeah, there you
It's a balancing act.
Yeah, I 100%. But it's funny that you say that because people do fall in love. Like they have a vision. They're like, oh man, I saw these floors, and for whatever reason,
I really
they're-
want those double pane windows.
Yeah, they're fixated on either like countertops or some type of flooring, some feature they want to put on the property because
Yeah.
they're like, this is gonna make the property.
And then you get one thing that's like, oh yeah, no, this is just one thing. I'll probably go a little bit higher on this. Then turns into next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things,
Yeah.
and then
It
Yeah, or
happens.
yeah, like I gotta go a little bit higher on this, but because you chose that option, now there are 3 other prerequisites that you have to do before you can install that one thing you got.
Yeah. Then next thing you know, you're buying like fans that have like 12-inch blades on a.
Everybody's walking.
And
it's like,
we know properties like that right now.
that's a
Yeah.
cute little fan, guys.
Yeah, in a
Yeah.
giant space.
yeah.
Yep. So it really is a balancing act, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you have to allocate and stick to budget. I think it mainly starts with what type of your budget, but the area that you're in. So you can put beautiful floors, gorgeous floors, and everything else in the house, is under budget or, in budget. But those
Right.
floors or those countertops, they just kind of stick out. There's no reason for it. A, you could have probably just saved money. Or B, what if you balanced that? You took, say you spent an extra $3,000-$4,000 there, but you could have taken those $3,000-$4,000 and spread it out. And maybe got a little nicer fan, maybe a little nicer finish, like cabinets or hardware. Maybe you weren't able to put doorknobs or cabinets on or pulls on the cabinets.
Yeah.
And maybe you couldn't afford the soft close cabinets because you wanted those countertops. And you're like, well, you could have balanced it all out, had all those other different features.
Maybe those cabinets were very important. Like, let's say you spend so much on, I don't know if this would be true, but just a hypothetical situation. Like, let's say that you spent all the money on the countertops or on something else, and then you got these cabinets that were made first and they're put in. And at first, I don't know, you were going to buy these mechanisms where you push in and then it comes out, and then now you can't do that no more, so you got to buy these knobs. But then it's really weird because they're like so close to each other.
Yeah, or they don't look right, or they don't match the style. Maybe you're going for a modern style now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you're like, I got to put, cabinet pulls on these, and then you put them on. Yeah, that doesn't look right. We see that once in a while.
So I cheated a little bit because I got to talk to your dad about what we were going to talk about today. And
Okay.
I kind of like
That's okay.
ran my rough draft through him, and he let me know if, it made sense or not. So what I feel a solution to this problem is, or something that you can actively do to make sure you don't end up in that situation, is you should already know the things that you will be buying for this house. You should already know through experience, or maybe you did some research, the type of flooring that you get. And okay, this is the type of flooring that we're going to go with when we're really on budget. This is the type of flooring that we get when we have a little bit more room on the flooring. And this is the third option for flooring when we don't have to care about any expense and we just all out. Like, you should already have a list of all the budget type options that you like, that works well and fits the style you're trying to go for when you go into that property, so you're not scratching your head. Because I think that is extra time you trying to decide what you're going to get, the property sitting there and your money being stuck there.
Yeah, I think where you get behind on budget is say like you ordered your cabinets, you ordered your countertop, because those are things you typically have to do at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And you had, you got your tile picked out for your showers, and you got your floor in order, right? Those are things
Right.
that take time, so you have to order at the beginning. I think what happens is along the way you notice, or where people get in trouble is, and we have all been there before, is you find a surprise. You're like, well, I wasn't expecting to have to pay for this or that. And so you're $2,000-$3,000 behind, and say that happens twice. So now you're, $4,000-$6,000 over budget. And so now you got to start pulling. You've already ordered your cabinets. You already ordered your countertops. There's really no going back. And so now you're like, wow, okay, what do I got to cut out?
Oh, dang, you're right. Those are the situations where, like,
That's where you get in trouble.
Yeah, because you have no choice.
Right. So those who are good at figuring out how to work around those errors or those dilemmas and still stay in budget, I mean, that's where you can really find a really experienced flipper or somebody who knows how to rehab. The other thing is I just recommend staying under budget until, because you need to have like a 10% oops in there. So plan on, if your budget's 50,
10% of that?
probably plan on like 45,000. Try to be in like 45,000 materials and labor, and then the oops would be the extra $5,000 to get you to the 50.
And let's talk
Okay.
about the domino effect that has if you are over budget. It's not only I'm over budget. It's all good. We'll sell the house for a little bit more. It's not always that easy.
No way. No way.
Because you're over budget, and what domino effect does that have? You have to raise the price on the sale so that you can make your margin. And in this market right now with the rates, depending on the area, depending on all sorts of factors, because that $10,000 increase in price, that could be the difference between a lot of showings and offers and not.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
true.
Absolutely.
Ooh.
And
yeah.
not only that, but if you get an offer at that number, it's got a praise for that now.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of factors that happen, a domino effect, a ripple effect if you're over budget. So I'm on board with Anthony. If anything, if you got a certain budget in mind, 50,000, try to be at 40, try to be at 45, just in case.
Yeah, and I think where people get the ones who get in trouble the most are the guys that are doing the work, because they start falling in love. They're like, they're sitting there all day looking at it. And so for the
Right.
flippers that are doing the work themselves, we're like, we don't do the work ourselves. So when we see it, we're just like, it's just the numbers, we're like, we have an idea of what it's going to look like. But when you're in the house, because I go there and I'm like, I talk to the guys and they're like, dude, what if we did this? Like, we were thinking do this. And I'm like, oh, that sounds great, but that's not going to be in budget. So, and I think that's what happens to flippers. They get there, they're like, well, man, I'm doing all this work. I might as well do this. And they do that, and they start doing it themselves and start getting into this rabbit hole of, well, hey, I textured it, but instead of doing the texture, I did a smooth finish. So it cost me an extra $5,000,
Right.
And it's like, whoa, you just blew the budget right there.
And two things that came up while you guys were saying that. You let me know if you think this is true or not. When you were talking about, now the domino effect, the price goes up, and then, now there's less chance of maybe having more buyers that you would have had at the lower price. I was thinking about it. So then in that case, would you be able to say, both of you, that the more the profit, it's an inverse proportion. The more the profit margin, usually it could mean the less walkthroughs, because that usually means you're selling it for a higher price.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna reduce your amount of buyers, is what you're saying,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're at a higher price.
Yeah, the more you try to sell it for to make more money, you increase that. But then as you increase that, you're also decreasing the type of buyers that you can have.
Yeah, I think when you start to do that, I think in my mind, I think us as investors or the flipper, they're like, it's going to be so beautiful at that high price that somebody will pay that.
Gotcha.
That's
And that's a
slippery
specific
slope.
person.
Yeah, you're looking for like one. There's going to be, there might be that one person. So now you get that one offer, and it's contentious, and because they're paying top dollar, now they're really,
And now they're really picky.
yeah, they're really picky, and you're pushing them to the limits.
Benzer's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, whereas you could be, less on the price, but you have a couple buyers, and you know, the more a person pays, the less leverage you have. You know, whoever pays more has more leverage. And so you start, it's all negotiation. So it's not just about money. There's other factors when you're going to sell something where you're like, yeah, I'm getting more money, but because I'm getting more money, I have to provide a better service. I have to provide, you know, a better product. So,
And then the other thing that popped into my head is, you tell me if this has merit to it. I feel like when you were talking about people are there, they fall in love with the property because it's them doing it themselves. Usually they feel like because they're doing it themselves, they can spend a little bit more money on certain things because they don't have to pay somebody to do the labor for it. But what that could do is put you in a false sense of safety and might make you spend so much money, or you're spending so much of that extra money that at the end it equals up the amount of money that would have happened if you paid somebody to do the labor for you.
Exactly.
And yes, you're going to say, yeah, but I'm getting nicer stuff. But also, if it's just you, only one person, or you're not you can do it, but you're not a professional on it, then that increases the time that it takes for you to sell the property.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it all comes down, Rick. It all comes down to discipline. And when you talk about time, not only let's say you spend more money, take more time to renovate the property. Now, like Felix, on that same wavelength, Felix was talking about finding that one buyer that it's going to take you, instead of 3 months to sell, if you were in budget, if everything was in line because the buyer likes the price, it's a win for them, it's a win for you. Now you're over budget, so you got to raise the price. It takes you 5-6 months to find a buyer, which is long. And now it takes 30, 45 to 60 days to close escrow. Now from a business standpoint, your cash conversion cycle right now is way too long.
And you run the risk of the market fluctuating on you.
Yeah, that's what we've seen. You know, we've seen a lot, and we tried, you know, we kind of got caught in, not in a bad way, but you start accumulating properties, and you're like, okay, I'm working on it, and the market starts we're in a nice period where everything was going up. You know, you could buy it, and the same house you bought is now worth more, and you didn't do anything to it. It just sat there. But now, with the interest rates, they're elevated, higher than they were, you know, 6 months ago. They've been moving. You know, they go up and down, but they're more elevated than they were, you know, 2 months ago right now as we're doing this one. But that has a huge impact on your buyer. And so if you're over budget because it's taken longer because your holding costs are more expensive.
Yeah.
And then also the rate or something has changed dramatically inside in the environment that you can't control, like the market. You can't control the rates. Then you're putting yourself, there's more risk to be had. So speed is key. Like Bailey said, there's that cash conversion cycle that, you know, not a lot of people understand. We try to help investors understand that. We try to help people understand there's a cash conversion cycle. It's a time that you can, you know, turn your money. And then also is leverage. You know, you leverage yourself, which we teach that, or which we explain that's a great thing to do, to leverage your own money. But when you put leverage, you take risk because now you're borrowing money at higher costs, and it takes, you know, if you want to do it quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So it's all different factors in it. I mean, obviously there's those that are buying them for cash. Then that's not that big of an impact. They're buying everything cash, and maybe they only want to do 2 a year. But if you're an investor that's trying to grow your business and you're trying to, you know, do 4 or 5 a year, you got to be hustling.
Yeah.
And be really moving those.
Yeah. And it, on the cash conversion cycle, from a business standpoint, it's a balancing act there too, because you can't, you know, if depending on the size of your business, you could have multiple properties that you're working on, and you got to make sure closings are on time. You got to make sure the funds are distributed on time, to make sure everything flows correctly. Yeah.
You got to make sure hey, if I buy this property, you know, I have, you know, $50,000, I got to rehab those budgets. So I got to make sure I close this property to replenish my funds that I'm going to put on, you know, to buy this, you know, to renovate this other property. And then in the meantime, those funds, okay, so you close on it, you use those funds, now you put it back in your bank account, and now you have some funds to buy your next property. Right? Yeah. So it's a real nice balancing act, because most investors, if you're doing this full time, you want to, typically everybody always wants to, have a project they're working on, have one on the market, have one they're currently working on. So maybe you're waiting for a close, or you just put it for sale. You go to move to work on this to another project, and then have one identified already. Hey, once I'm done with this in 2 months, 3 months, this is the next project I'm working on. That's the ideal situation.
Right.
It's like a three property mix at the beginning, like if you're one person.
And talking about cash convergency, is that the cases where like a buyer would be willing to purchase a property that they're not making too much on it, but will be able to move fast? Because I could buy this property that's going to take a lot of work, but will net me $50,000-$60,000, or I can maybe do 3 properties that are fast convergence cycles, and I can get the same amount of money out.
Yeah, basically that's it. I mean, Bailey
Yeah,
loves
I don't-
cash conversion cycle.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a blanket statement for that. It just depends on the timing, how much capital you
Mhm.
have in your account, what your lenders look like, what rates are they charging. I think a huge important factor to that is the location of the property. If it's a property, the location, maybe it's a certain school zone, certain neighborhood that properties go really quick, you may be willing to buy the property at a skinnier deal at a higher price versus a property that's maybe not be in the best neighborhood, best location. So you have to be cautious about what you're buying it for, because there could be a lot of factors that either hinder the price or hinder the time it takes and things like that. So cash conversion cycle, how fast you can put your money in, get your money out, it's huge. You got to keep everything moving.
Yeah, no, it sounds like there's definitely a lot of variables, and some of them have to do with cash convergency cycle, and some of them have to do is an investor willing to do that. Are they okay doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think so. The quicker you can turn your money, like you said, because here's the thing: like if you have your money wrapped up into a property, which is fine, you're making 60,000, but then you got one that's like, hey, look at this one, just needs a minimal cleanup. We can get this one out, and you do it in half the time. Say instead of 6 months, you do it in 3, and then you have an opportunity to buy another one. So you made 20 over here, you're gonna make 60 in 6 months, but you make 20 in 3 months. But what happens, then the ideal thing was that you could do another one for 40, maybe 50, maybe another 60,000.
Yeah.
So you can turn your money. So in the 6 months, instead of doing, one for 60,000, you do maybe 2 or 3 for 80,000.
So it sounds like what it all boils down to is before you make a decision, do your research so you're making a good purchase.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this, go back to just your buy box, like Bailey was talking about. Like, if you're like, hey, I think where a lot of investors do is they see a property and they're like, oh, that's a good deal. And you can make money, and it will make you money, but you're not sure on the time factor. You're like, well,
yeah,
it's, that property's kind of out there. It's in the counties, or, it's not in the most desirable neighborhood. So you don't really know, like, you got to find a specific buyer again. Or maybe it's in a different price range where you're like, well, I'm going to find a buyer. This is a great deal, but it might take me longer to sell. So with those, those are the buy box nice to be like, okay, well, if I stay in this neighborhood, like say, like for instance, we know Somerton. If I stay in Somerton, there's not a lot of inventory. It's a regular neighborhood. We know it's going to sell.
Nothing has really sold that is older than 1970.
Yeah, I think you were doing that, right?
Yeah.
In Somerton.
There's literally no comps.
It's hard to find comps. I mean, the newer cookie cutter neighborhoods are easier to find, but the older part of Somerton, they never come for sale.
That's true.
So, but in Somerton in general, just take that. I mean, they sell, you're looking at 30, 45 days on market from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're pretty comfortable in that spot to know you're going to turn your money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But whereas you take let's just say we run into this, like say you take a mobile home in the foothills in August or July.
Yeah. There's nobody. You see, what are those things called that roll across the street?
Tumbleweeds.
Oh, the tumbleweeds.
You see a tumbleweeds roll across the street. There's no snowbirds. Yeah.
And so we've learned that over the years. I mean, there is really a market for that. Like it's November through March. Things sell in the summer, but during COVID, everything sold at any time. During COVID, I mean like 2020 to 2022. But the last 2-3 years, 2.5 years, we're back to like a normal cycle, like in 2023, like where you have seasonality. And we didn't see that, so we got spoiled for a couple years. We're like, anything is gonna sell at any time. But now we see like, okay, no, summer's gonna slow down in the foothills because there's less buyers.
A lot of people thought that's how it's gonna be all the time.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we even learned that. We saw that. I mean, not that it killed us, but that it took longer. It took longer to sell things, and you're like, whoa, okay, well, snowbirds are definitely. I think I read they're like 20% down this year. Even in the winter, it was things were slower, less people buying because I think the Canadian dollar has a lot to do with that. I think a lot less Canadians came, but it's interesting. And I think a lot more people are moving to the foothills area just because there's less in town. I don't know. I'm still analyzing. We're still trying to figure that part out. But I mean, the foothills is definitely growing, but it's you got some families out there, but there's a lot of 2-bedroom, 2-bath houses.
Yeah.
And so, or trailers, and so families don't buy those typically. Felix is finding that out.
Yeah.
There's a big price difference, right, Felix?
Huge.
Between a 2-bedroom and a 3?
Yeah, between a 2 and a 3, because it makes sense. Like when you think about it, a 2-bedroom, it's very specific, but
yeah, you're going to have like the parents in one, they have 2 kids.
Both of them in that room, but those kids are going to grow up. And eventually they're going to outgrow that house and they're going to look for a 3-2.
Yeah.
So
At the beginning of Next Level, I remember Anthony. I would bring Anthony run comps and stuff on properties, and I'd bring him comps, and I'd be like, oh yeah, this one's a comp. It just has, instead of, because our subject property was a 3-2. Oh, this one's a 2-2, but it's so the price is probably this. The reality of it is it's not, because a 3-bedroom is way different than a 2-bedroom, because you got to think of the end consumer. You got to think about, okay, is a family going to be able to manage it to your buyer's pool diminishes quite a lot if it's a 2-bedroom.
And even people that don't have families are looking for 3-2s, because I don't have kids, but for us it was extremely important that our property was a 3-2. We did not take a look at the 2-2s. It was so hard. We looked at the 2-2s and we considered them. It was really easy. No, we're not doing 2-2s. We're doing 3-2. And we didn't have no kids. It's just me and my girl.
On your end, how come you wanted a 3-2 versus a 2-2?
It just feel like it was necessary. You need to have a 3-2 because, one can be an office, one can be a guest room, or both can be an office, and one of the offices could be a guest room. Because, she has her things. I have my things I like doing. She's a writer. I like playing video games or filming or whatever it is. And, I can't be doing that in the living room if she's trying to write. She can put her headphones on. But if we each have our own room where we could do our own things, that's perfect.
Yeah, no, the same way. I mean, I used to work out of the house, so you had my office, and then you got to have a guest room.
Yep, and we already outgrew our 3-2. We were like, no, we definitely need a 4. It's crazy stuff, man. Yeah,
I mean, with the 55 plus, I mean, you could do 2-2s.
Yeah,
but you got to realize there's seasonality. So you could do 2-2s and they hold value. So I don't want everybody to get me wrong that a 2-2 is garbage. I mean, they do hold a certain amount of value because older people, they're down here just retired and they have a guest room or a craft room and they have their room. They're good. But there's seasonality. Like those houses are going to sell like November through March. And I think we had one this summer and we listed like in August. And we were like, man, it's not selling. This is like super priced super well. And then we had it September. And then I think I said, like, this thing's going to sell in November.
Yeah.
And then as soon as November 1st hit, it sold like the next day.
Yeah.
Like butter.
Yeah.
And I think from a buy and hold perspective too, I mean, when you think of equity play and appreciation and things like that, a 3-2 in my head is over a 2-2, in terms of increasing in values.
Yeah,
depending on the area and
it's
things like
exponential jump. Like you go 2-2, the value add for a 3-2.
And then it's a linear increment.
Yeah, then the 4-2, you get a little bit more, but you don't get as big of a bump.
Right, because then that becomes more of like a
luxury.
Necessity versus luxuries.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So
a 3-2 is definitely a necessity for a bunch of people. So that's why it's such a big jump.
Yeah, you got areas with big families.
Mm-hmm.
Then 4 bedroom, 5 bedrooms, which you don't find too much in Yuma, but 4, 5, 6 bedrooms, they become super valuable.
Yeah. Well, to recap, it's a balancing act for your your budget. Make sure first try to implement buying everything under budget so you can have some cushion. Also add you said 5%?
Yeah, that cushion,
5% cushion. And
miscellaneous.
to clarify, that 5% is of the budget.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So
minimum.
you have to add a little cushion in there, minimum of 5%, to account for those situations where you might have already ordered that cabinet or you already dropped down that wall or whatever it is, and there's no going back because it would cost just as much. So at that point, just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Right on.
What else would you say, like in summary of the balancing act of making sure everything's kept in budget and everything makes sense together?
Yeah, spread your funds out. Don't spend too heavy in one area. Make sure that your grades of finishes all align. You don't want to have like a real high-end counter with some cheap cabinets.
Yeah.
Or some cheap floor. You want to make sure everything kind of fits the value of the home, so you're providing a value throughout. That's really going to make your
And would
house
you
look
say
really
it's a good idea to keep a list of all the things that you're buying? So like you already know, like, hey, last time like these fans, they're really nice or budget and they look really good. So that way, like in the future, like boom, you already know like that.
Yeah, no, we know guys that they already have, they buy everything the same. And they have like 2 or 3 different color palettes. They're like, we have this one that's like on the white, this one's on like the beige, and this one's on the gray. And maybe there's a roof that's already there, so you just it's a gray roof, so we go gray tone.
Those are some really cool operations because we know some guys that do that, and it's really cool showing up to like their flips and seeing it because it feels so familiar because we've seen it before.
Right, exactly.
But it looks so good. They're like, why reinvent the wheel? And we always know that it's gonna sell for what they want.
Yeah, exactly. So you streamline the operation, you stay in budget when you know what you're buying.
Yeah, and I think speed too.
Cash convergency cycle, yes.
Speed, yeah.
Yeah,
Cash conversion
the
cycle.
speed, yep. There we go.
All right. Well, that's it, everybody. That's what we're talking about today in this episode. I hope it was grateful for you guys. If we provided any value to you, please follow us on our social media and go to our Yuma REI meetings, which is every second Thursday of every month. So that would be March 14th.
Let's go.
For March.
Let's do it.
And we'll give you the details on the Facebook group chat, and we'll also put it up on our other social media. So thank you guys so much for being here. We are Next Level Home Buyers. We don't buy properties. We buy problems.